Hi guys, digital anchor Lovie Smith here. We are getting ready for a new era for the Houston Texans as they are set to announce they've already announced Lovie Smith as their head coach, but formally introduce him coming up at 11 o'clock this morning. This all came together pretty fast. I know a lot of Texans fans were like, what is happening? Because it was just yesterday morning that we learned they'd even had discussions with Lovie Smith that they acknowledged publicly. And then yesterday afternoon, we got this announcement from the Texans official. We have hired Lovie Smith as head coach. Not a stranger to the Texans. He'd been the defensive coordinator for the past season. I love this picture. We were just talking about it here in the newsroom. Signed, beard, delivered. Lovie Smith signing his contract to be the head coach of the Houston Texans. And he released this statement saying, I want to first thank Nick Casario and the McNair family for giving me this opportunity. I'm humbled to be the next head coach of the Houston Texans and incredibly excited to continue to work with Nick. I have so many friends, family, teammates, and coaches to thank for supporting me and helping me continue to do what I love, which is teaching and developing players. I understand the responsibility I have to this organization and the city to develop a championship level program. I am ready to work and build it together. We also heard from the Texans owner, Cal McNair. He writes, the last couple of seasons have been disappointing, but I believe in the vision Nick Casario has for our football team moving forward, and I see the pieces coming together. Our goal here is to create an environment that's conducive to winning on a day-to-day basis and compete for championships. I've had an extreme amount of respect for Lovie for years now, and that only grew with the work he did last season and throughout this process. I'm excited for him and his family as we continue to evolve as an organization. And this man has been mentioned multiple times, Nick Casario, the Texans general manager. He said, quote, he is one of the most respected coaches in the NFL and an established leader, a proven winner. Lovie has shown the ability to develop players both on and off the field. For years, we had numerous discussions with countless coaches, executives, and players, and what revealed itself is that Lovie has both the leadership and people skills it takes to lead us forward. We both understand how much work is in front of us, but we embrace the responsibility and look forward to continuing to build a program that can have contained success. Our Jason Bristol talked to a couple big names in Houston sports to get their take on this hiring.
This team has conditioned fans, media members, I don't know, maybe players on the team itself to expect the unexpected.
Former Texan Seth Payne on the team's sudden switch to Lovie so late in its search.
I think the ceiling for Lovie realistically is as high as the talent around him.
And Brian Flores, the first man the Texans interviewed, but who is now suing the NFL for racial discrimination. After a, quote, great interview, his counsel tweets, it is obvious that the only reason Mr. Flores was not selected was his decision to stand up against racial inequality across the NFL. But two Hall of Famers believe Lovie is a good, if not great fit. Former coach Tony Dungy talking with our sister station in Phoenix.
I think Lovie Smith could be the perfect person for them to bring some stability, some calmness, some under control attitude there.
And quarterback Troy Aikman in Houston Monday to promote his new brand of beer.
I love Lovie Smith. I've known him a long time, and he's an outstanding football coach.
But what will Lovie say when asked how he ended up being the Texans' choice? Seth Payne has a prediction.
Lovie Smith can very much just answer how he saw it from his perspective. I don't think that will upend him at all. I think ultimately this is a Nick Casario, Cal McNair, Jack Easterby decision. So Lovie Smith can just tell his own story.
And we will hear Lovie's side of the story as well as the team's later this morning.
Again, that press conference is coming up, slated to start at 11 o'clock in just a few minutes. We got video from the Texans earlier of Lovie walking in for the first day on the job as the Texans head coach. Now, this is not a role that is unfamiliar to him. Of course, he spent 9 years coaching the Chicago Bears, led them to a Super Bowl 41, in which he made history. He and Tony Dungy became the first black head coaches to face off in a Super Bowl. After those 9 seasons, he spent 2 in Tampa Bay coaching the Buccaneers. Then he went on to coach in college football for Illinois, the Illini. He was there for a little less than 5 full seasons, fired in 2020. And after that season is when he came on board with the Texans as defensive coordinator. This is a man with Texas roots. Remember, he was born and raised in Gladewater, Texas. That's kind of between Tyler and Shreveport. Went to Big Sandy High School, and that's actually where he started his coaching career, coaching local high school football, and then worked his way up, eventually getting to the Super Bowl. I want to run through, as we wait for this press conference to get started. Actually, let me give you a live view of that. We're just standing by waiting for this to get started. I am listening in, so as soon as they come on stage, we will take this full. But let's look back at, the Texans' history to date. The franchise got its start in 2002. Dom Capers was on the headset then. He made it through 4 seasons with a record of 18-46. Next came Gary Kubiak, and he is to date the longest tenured coach of the Texans. He spent 8 seasons with the team, had a 61-64 record, and racked up 2 division titles in that time. But when he was fired, interim coach Wade Phillips stepped in, son of legendary Oilers coach Bum Phillips. Wade only coached 3 games and lost all 3, but he started this pattern of a defensive coordinator stepping up as the interim coach, or in this case now, the head coach, when the coach was fired. After the interim run by Wade Phillips, in came Bill O'Brien. He was here for 7 seasons, had a 52-48 record, and I know it's cut off there a little bit by the graphic, but he had 4 division titles during his time with the Texans. Was fired after an 0-4 start, and that's when defensive coordinator Romeo Crennel took the reins. He coached 12 games. Oh, this is getting going, so we're going to take this live now.
And welcome, as we have a monumental day for this franchise. The introduction of the 5th coach in the history of the Houston Texans, Lovie Smith. We're going to hear from Cal McNair in just a second here, and also statements from General Manager Nick Casario up here on stage, and of course, Lovie Smith. After their statements, our Director of Communications, Omar Mazoub, will come up here and moderate the Q&A session here. But to kick it all off, won't you please welcome the Chairman and CEO of your Houston Texans, Cal McNair.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everyone. This is an exciting day. I'm really glad we're able to do this and do this in person. Our goal here is to build a program that can compete for championships and sustain long-term success. My family and I are extremely competitive, and the last couple of seasons have been disappointing and hard for all of us. But I believe in Nick Casario and the vision he has for our football team, and I see the pieces coming together. I've never seen a more thorough, inclusive, and in-depth process than what Nick just went through with our coaching search. Our entire organization is a much better place this year than it was last year, in large part because of Nick. But all that work and progress behind the scenes needs to start showing up, and we understand that. I expect to win at everything we do, and there's pressure to perform in our organization. I've had an extreme amount of respect for Coach Lovie Smith for years, and that only grew last season and throughout this whole process. So I'll turn it over to Nick and say a few words and introduce Lovie as our head coach. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning and welcome. try to bring a little levity to the air. I know everybody's disappointed I don't have a vest on, so I'll save those for the season. So, and no Silicon Valley references either, Landry, so you don't have to worry about that. So, but first of all, just want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Want to first off thank the Smith family, Lovie's wife, Marianne, Miles, Matt, Cara, and the soon-to-be baby here on the way. So this day is really about the Smith family, and it's about the McNair family. Just a word about Cal and Hannah. I just appreciate their support throughout this entire process. They put a lot of faith and trust in what I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do as an organization. They stood behind me every step of the way, and I'm blessed to have their trust, and thank them for backing me throughout this process. I'd say the process in and of itself, it was a long and thorough process. My responsibility was to do as much work as possible. We started, second week in January, and then we arrived at an endpoint here today. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue, I would say, with a lot of different people throughout the league, players, coaches, executives, former head coaches, different people. And my job was to take in a lot of information throughout that process and try to put ourselves in a position and make the decision that I feel is best ultimately for the Houston Texans organization. And I believe that we've arrived at that point. Coach Smith is one of the most respected figures in the league. He's well respected throughout the league. He's well respected in the halls of NRG. I think a lot of us were able to see that this year. So as we worked through this, as I worked through this and got to the end point, I realized the best decision, the best opportunity for this organization to move forward was with the choice of Lovie Smith as the next head coach. So we're all excited. I'm excited. We have a lot of work in front of us. I think Lovie and I both feel the same way. We know what the road ahead looks like. We have a lot of work to do. We're committed to doing that work. So to Big Sandy's own and to the best gray beard in the building, I'm going to introduce our next head coach, Lovie Smith.
Thank you, Nick. There's a lot of people. Just think, I'm a high school product of our great state of Texas. And a dream that of course, as you start playing football, you want to have a chance to play as long as you can. And to me, I always wanted to be a coach. So I say that most guys playing high school football here would like to someday lead their home state team. I can't thank Cal, Hannah, Miss McNair enough for having the faith in me to lead our great program. Also can't thank Nick enough. I've had a chance this past year to work with Nick in a lot of different ways. And, as people talk about interviews, sometimes you have an interview, for a couple hours or whatever. Nick got a chance to, I had a chance to work with Nick for an entire year, and for him to see me on what I believe, how I believe football should be played, how I think you should coach our young men. So there's just so much I was able to get from that. I wanted to be a coach all my life, and a lot of that is kind of based on what I had in a coach growing up. Think about this also. My high school my seventh grade basketball coach still coaches football here, high school football coach here in the city of Houston. My first college coach lives here in this great town, so really pumped up about it. The love of my life I met on a blind date 42 years ago. We'll celebrate 42 years today. My wife, Marianne, and then also the rest of my family I have here. I have a chance to work with an outstanding linebacker coach on our staff, Miles Smith, and his lovely wife, Cara, and another one of my sons, Matt, that was here. Also some special people that I have here with me today, or guys that will be leading, will have a prominent role as we go forward, playing winning football. I've known Pep Hamilton for a long period of time, and his wife, Nicole, and I've tried to hire Pep a couple of different times, and it didn't work out. But it's kind of a perfect storm for him to be able to lead our offense. He'll be leading our offense this year. Someone I did know, but this past year allowed me a chance to get to know, was Frank Ross. Frank is an outstanding special teams coordinator. He and his wife, Christina, and their lovely daughter here. I'm so excited about them wanting to join our staff. A lot of the people in this building have helped me an awful lot. I got a chance to get to know during this year. So thankful for them. But to sit in this role, in this position, it's about winning football games and doing it a certain way. My philosophy a little bit, you know, I'm old school, you know. Again, I'm from a little small town, Big Sandy. It was about winning football. And we had a simple formula. We play good offense. And our good offense that Pep will be leading, of course, is you need to be able to run the football. There's a time we need to be able to pass the football, but doing it in a certain way. Tough, hard-nosed football, disciplined ball. That's what you will see from us. On the defensive side of the football, being able to, again, score just like on offense. It's not, as we look at it defensively, it's not a turnover. It's a takeaway of getting takeaways. And just, again, playing a certain brand of ball. Then on special teams, you cannot win football games without that third element, special teams. There's going to be, hopefully, one of the all-time greats that will be going into the Hall of Fame based on what he did. A guy had the chance to coach with special teams, but it's important. But the fourth phase would be the fans. Cannot play winning football without you. I have seen a day when it's tough playing outside at our NRG Stadium. And it's our responsibility to bring the fans back and get them excited about the product we're going to put on the football field. And I guarantee you we can do that. So it's a great day. We're excited. We all are. As we go forward, look forward to working hand in hand, side by side with Nick to get the Texans back where they need to be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. We're going to take a few questions. I just ask that when I call on you and you take the mic to introduce yourself and then direct your question at either Nick or Lovie so we know who the question is directed to. So we'll start with John.
John McClain from the Chronicle. Lovie, congratulations. How did you feel to not be part of the process, then get the last interview, and then finally get your third head coaching job?
Thank you for the question, John. Known John a long period of time. Well, how it feels, you know, as I said, you know, a goal of a lot of us, of course, would be to ultimately lead our professional football team. As you go through the process, you know, I've been a head football coach for a lot of years and gone through a lot of the process. In the end, you ultimately end up with the guy that's kind of, you feel like is right to lead the program to the next phase. So that's, you know, for me, I had a great job last year being a defensive coordinator here. I got to see the potential of what we could do here. And and the opportunity, of course, presented itself to me late in the game, I was just excited for it because I know what we can be around here.
Mark?
Lovie, Mark Berman from Fox Houston. A two-part question, Lovie. One, what were your emotions when Nick told you you were his guy? And part two, where does this moment stack up for you among all the great moments you've had in your career?
You can imagine the excitement that I did have when Nick did tell me. There's 32 of these jobs, you know, in the country. So they have an opportunity to lead one. And there's an extensive process that Nick went through to get the best person that he felt could lead our program. So, well, of course, you can imagine, of course, how I felt with that. What was the other part of your question?
Where does this moment stack up amongst all of them?
I thought that's what you asked. I mean, my wife, Marianne, is here, so it was pretty special, that blind date that we went on. That was a pretty special moment. And there's been a lot of others. You know, we're expecting grandchild number 9 and 10. A lot of special things have happened to us in our family. But this moment is pretty special. It's not often you get a chance to lead 3 professional football teams. I don't know if there's a guy that looks like me that's had an opportunity to do that. So that's pretty special. But just what I know about the organization and the potential. You know, as you look at, for players, you're always talking about the potential that you see in an athlete. Just to lead a program like this, I know the potential on what we can do. And we kind of started the process this year.
Ed?
Ed Werder with ESPN, and I have a question for each of you. Lovie, I'd like to know your take on what you just said Nobody who looks like you has coached 3 different teams in the NFL. What's your take, given your experience on the Brian Flores lawsuit against the league?
Well, I don't know enough about the laws. This is what I can speak on. I realize the amount of black head coaches there are in the National Football League. It's Mike Tomlin, and I think there's me. I don't know of many more. So there's a problem. I mean, it's obvious for us. But after there's a problem, all right, what are you going to do about it? There's a lot of different talk on how and what you should do. But I think it always comes down to action a little bit. And I know one person that wanted to do something about it. It's just not about the color of your skin or who you want leading a program, but I know Cal and Hannah, of course, they said this is what, maybe there's a problem, or not maybe there's a problem, there's a problem, this is what we're going to do for it. I'm here. So, and what we're doing, and it's just not about me being here right now, on how head coaches are selected a little bit. A lot of it is, okay, you know, a lot of offensive coaches are leading their programs right now. 2 Super Bowl participants have guys that have made their living with offensive football. I understand that. What I know as we go forward a little bit, I see Pep Hamilton right here, and I see his color, and he's going to be calling plays for us. And maybe it's about getting guys in a position for people to see exactly who they are and what they can do. I understand the problem, and I know the Houston Texans are doing something about it to make it better.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Nick.
Go ahead, Ed. Yep, sure.
Specifically, that happened last week, the lawsuit was filed. How did that influence, if at all, getting to where you are now?
Yeah, good question. I would say didn't affect us at all. I would say just speaking specific to Brian. So, you know, I've known Brian a long time, you know, personally and professionally. I have a lot of respect for Brian as a coach and a person. You know, he was a part of this process. He's been a good coach in this league for a number of years. You know, part of my responsibility was to spend time with as many quality candidates as possible, and Brian was one of those. As it pertains to the individual lawsuit, I would say from the beginning of when we started our process, call it, you know, January 14th to now, there was multiple conversations throughout the course of, I would say, the last few weeks with a number of different candidates, and that was pretty fluid. I think this process in and of itself is very fluid, and we have we got a fire. But do not use the elevators. Don't use the elevators. All right, I'll try to talk over the microphone. But anyways, this process is pretty fluid, right? And you have to take information in, but I would say there were conversations with Brian after that took place, so that really didn't affect the process at all. A lot of it was me taking information, processing a lot of information, talking to various different people and different parties and different candidates, and ultimately arriving at an endpoint that I felt made the most sense for our organization, and that's what we did. This is what happens when you have an event upstairs.
Just give us a second and see if it turns off. No.
We can talk over a few, Omar. That's all right. We can have little laughs. We'll make it work.
Brian Smith, Houston Chronicle. Nick, were the Texans planning to hire Josh McCown? And the second part of that is, will Josh McCown be on Lovie's staff?
Yeah, there were never plans to hire anybody until we arrived at kind of an endpoint. And I'd say as it pertains to staffing, Lovie and I will have discussions on that. Lovie will have a lot of input. There'll be a number of other coaches that will have input. So the next step for us really after today is to kind of continue to build out the staff. And I'd say we're making some progress on that. What that final constitution looks like at the end, you know, I'm sure it'll be some moving parts here as we go.
Sarah?
Sarah Barshop, ESPN. Lovie, you were talking about how you feel like you're helping Pep put him in a position, and that's kind of your job, is helping other people who look like you. Was there anyone who helped you do that and put you in this position? Stand by for further instructions. Do not use the elevators.
You want me to translate that for you?
Yes, you're going to have to ask that one more time.
Sarah, go ahead. It was about Pep and just about...
So you were talking about how that you think part of your job now as a head coach, black head coach, is to help put other people who look like you in a position to succeed, like you did with Pep. Was there anyone who helped you put you in that position that you feel like you can thank for this?
Yes, great question, Sarah. Yes, first talking about me, I had a chance to work on my first staff in the National Football League was on Tony Dungy's staff, a black man that gave me an opportunity. And from talking to him back then, it was about, and it's just not the coordinators. I think we have a responsibility to, and for me being a black man, to give as many guys, back then it was about an opportunity. I think it's important to give as many black coaches as possible an opportunity to work up through the ranks. As you look at my last staff in Tampa, my last staff at Illinois, I've heard the statement, there's not enough qualified guys. That's a misnomer a little bit. But to answer your question, I think the ones of us in this role, and not just a black head coach, but all coaches in general. You look at our league, of course, majority of the league is with black athletes. You can find qualified black candidates to work themselves up. Once you see the look of our staff, once it's all done, completed, you'll see that it's just not talk going into that. There's a way to do it. We have a lot of young black coaches that are going to do great things. Of course, Pep Hamilton being one of them.
Brooks, go ahead.
Brooks Cabana from the Houston Chronicle. Nick, you said that there wasn't plans to hire you until it reached an end point. What, after the lawsuit went through, what were some of the things that allowed you to help make that decision? Because obviously there's things you probably wanted to know about that and reaching your ultimate decision.
Yeah, nothing really changed. Again, I'd say these processes, there's no direct path to get to your ultimate endpoint. There's a lot of, I would say, information, again, that my responsibility is to try to process that. And I think to keep that communication open, I think the McNairs have been very supportive. We had a lot of dialogue, I'd say, throughout the process over the course of a 2 to 3 week period. So you just try to stay on track, you try to stay on course, and ultimately, I'm a very pragmatic, kind of internally driven, internally process-oriented individual, and ultimately it was my responsibility to kind of work through everything and then make the decision that, I felt was best. And, I'd say Lovie was a big part of those discussions, at different points throughout the course of, the process. He had an opportunity to kind of speak on our program. Once there was an opening that was available, Lovie was able to kind of give his viewpoint of the program. What are some of the things that we did well? What are some of the things we might be able to improve upon? So to have that type of input as you're going for somebody that was here in your building, certainly resonates and carries some weight. So again, ultimately, I was trying to be very thoughtful. That was my mission and my goal, and that's what the McNairs asked me to do. And that's what I try to do the best of my ability and ultimately make the decision that, I felt was best for our entire organization.
And then to follow up on that, Lovie Smith being a part of the staff, you talked about, how that relationship helps you. Going into it, what were you looking for in a candidate, and having gone through other candidates outside the building, what is it that ultimately led you to someone who was already in your building?
Yeah, ultimately it's about what's the right candidate for you and for your building, I would say, and we talked about this at different points. Head coach and coaching in general is about leadership and it's about teaching, right? So those are the two core elements. Whether or not you have a philosophical belief on one side of the ball, you're an offensive coach, you're a defensive coach, and how that translates onto your team or not. So I would say those core elements, and then to have a plan, Lovie kind of articulated some of the things that he believes in, offensively and defensively. And I'd say one of the things actually that was interesting, just overall from my perspective, Lovie and I didn't really know each other last year, going into the season. And I would say systematically, defensively, it was certainly an adjustment or something that was different, relative to what I was accustomed to being around in New England, from a front structure, from a number of different things. And it's interesting, Lovie and I kind of laugh about it now, but we had a lot of good discussions, a lot of good dialogue and conversations, and sometimes some friendly disagreements about maybe how we were playing a certain thing or who was doing it. And to his credit, he was pretty open-minded and listened. I think, not to speak for Lovie, but the year 2 of a system, you can make a few more tweaks and modifications and adjustments. So I think as we build on what we did in year 1, kind of putting the foundation in place, kind of look at what some of those things are going to look like in the second year, I think those are some of the things as you just kind of go from year to year, that are important to take into consideration.
And also as you, I've been doing this a while, had a chance to think I want our offense to look this way, and then you see, well, you can do it this way. That's the advantage when you had a chance to lead 3 programs on exactly what you want to do, what you want the offense to look like. And of course, defensively, I have some beliefs that has been instilled in me a long time on what it takes to play winning football and how the special teams, offense and defense goes together. And you're right with Nick and I. Nick is a football guy, so to see exactly when you don't know each other and then have to go over and explain exactly why we do everything is always a good thing. That's why I'm so excited about it, us as we go forward.
There's no fire, by the way. Ron, go ahead.
All right, this is for Lovie. Ron Hughley, Sports Radio 610. My concern to you is with everything that's happened the past couple of years around the Texans, both on and off the field, the production hasn't been great. I'm curious, what sold you on coming to the Texans? I mean, I know that you have to sell yourself, but what was sold to you to want to take over here?
Well, from being in the state, I mean, there's history. You got to look to history to tell you what it can be. It's always about that. As you look for players, it's just not the finished product that you look for. It's about the potential that you see. And being here this past year, I saw the potential of kind of starting from the bottom floor and then start building it up. And then as a coach to see and just know, again, experience tells you what it looked like here and where you can go. And I've had a chance, those other experiences, to be in that situation. And just who wouldn't want to play here in this stadium? A football city supporting you with great players. Hopefully one of our all-time great is back in the back. Andre will have an opportunity to go into the Hall of Fame. But our history behind what we do and what we've done here. Is that correct? Did I I was kind of looking a little bit. It could have been you also, all right? But our history that we have in this program, and again, I'm going back to the Texas roots to know all about that. And to just look where it's not long ago, we weren't in the conversation about a team going, having an opportunity in the playoffs, of course, to get to the Super Bowl. It's there. And I know working together with Nick and of course, the commitment we have from the McNair family, we can get back there.
Brandon.
Brandon Scott, Sports Radio 610, and I know Pep is in the building as well, but I'm just curious on the changes to the offense, what they will consist of, what that would look like, considering that's one of the areas where y'all needed the most improvement. Are y'all going to run a different scheme? Like, what's that going to look like? And I had a follow-up.
Well, and we have time to get into details a little bit later, but you got a chance to see some of our players. I mean, it always starts with the quarterback, right? I had a chance, Davis Mills. I had a chance to see him from a lot of different angles this past year. Early on, he wasn't playing, and he was going against the one defense each week. So I got a chance to see quite a bit of him. And then, of course, got a chance to see him as he moved into our starting role. But it always does start with the quarterback. And I know it's a little broad right now, but being able to run the football, and Pep has a lot of experience going a lot of different ways. It's just not one thing you're going to do. But what it's going to look like, we're going to have an offense that's going to score points, to put our guys in position. There were times, as you look through the course of this past year, you got a chance when we were really doing it the right way, you got a chance to see what we could possibly be.
And then the second question, kind of going back to, and I know you guys don't want to comment on litigation, but some of the substantive points that Brian Flores' lawsuit was trying to make was not just the hiring, but sort of the process. And he points out how a lot of black coaches are put in less than advantageous situations, and that sort of perpetuates sort of this cycle of not being able to diversify the candidacy pool. Like, did you guys understand that? Is there anything to be said for the overall situation around when you hire a black coach? Last year you hired one at a team that wasn't going to be very good. This year you guys still have some challenges. I mean, is that something that you guys have to sort of consider, the substantive issue of that as well, on top of the hiring itself?
Yeah, and I'll answer that. I think just specific, look, the numbers are what the numbers are league-wide, okay? Like, nobody can refute those and nobody can argue with those. But again, there's a couple different buckets, right? And that's more of an issue that I think the league has to address, and I think they're committed to addressing. And I think collectively, all of us, whatever our roles are, like, you know, we have to be willing and committed to be a part of that change as well, whatever that looks like. So again, I mean, when you run a football team, you want to try to run a football team that has good people, good players, and good coaches, whatever that construct looks like, right? So our responsibility is to try to stay true to that and try to find people that fit those roles. And I think what Brian articulates, you know, the numbers are what the numbers are, and that's just the reality of it. And it's about finding solutions. I certainly don't have all the answers. You know, I can't even begin to fathom what that answer or solution is. But to be a part of the solution, that's what we can make a commitment to doing. And really, the most important thing for us is to what's right for the Houston Texans. Let's focus on our football team, and let's do the things that we feel make the most sense for us.
Nate Griffin, Fox 26. Question for you first, then Lovie. I want to ask you, you had to have some sense of comfort having Lovie Smith with all the experience in the same building. What was it that finally got you there? And then for you, Lovie, are you going to continue running the defense?
You want to answer that first? Go ahead. I'll let Lovie answer.
Well,
He's excited
that's an
about
easy
that.
one. You know, this past year I had so much fun. I've never gotten away. I've been, of course, been a head coach a while. A lot of those years I was heavily involved with the defense. I'm at the purity of the sport. I love coaching, and it's just not coach talk, having my hands on. So to get around and answer your question, I love calling plays last year. I will be calling the defenses this year. Just look around right now. Most of the head coaches that are offensive guys, they all call plays. For some reason, a lot of the defensive guys don't. I think I can help our program the most right now with me in that same role. So I will be doing that.
And to answer your question, the search kind of embodies that to some degree. So what I mean by that is I was asked to be very thoughtful and very process-oriented and just be consistent. And I think when you kind of look at Lovie on a day-to-day basis, like that kind of defines who he is as a human being. And you're able to see that. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, has certain things and convictions that he believes in. And he's well respected throughout the course of the league, you know, not only in our building, but outside of the building as well. And I'd say I have a respect and appreciation for Lovie for who he is and what he's done over the course of his career. And I certainly learned some things from him this year as well. And I kind of had to open my mind a little bit, open my heart, and realize, you know what, there's maybe a different way to do some things. Again, part of it is kind of having constructive dialogue. And I think there were times that we had that. I know Frank was in some of those meetings, you know, where we had some of those dialogues before the game about rolling the kicking game and the starters playing on special teams and their role. And Lovie has his beliefs on that, and he's not afraid to share them, but in a very respectful way. But again, I think if we can respect each other as a part of the process, whether it's about a player, whether it's about the scheme, whether it's about who we're using where. Again, when you watch us play this past year, we had a lot of players that kind of changed positions, right? You know, Lonnie started at safety, then we moved in the corner. You know, that was a discussion that, you know, we had at different points. And, you know, maybe, you know, I could have had that conversation a little bit sooner, or we could have, you know, so again, I think there's some things that took place that there was kind of a two-way street. And I think at least we both, I would say, were open-minded to some degree, but also understanding that he has certain beliefs and convictions, and I have certain beliefs and convictions. But ultimately, you have to arrive at an endpoint collectively, because in the end, it's not about one person. It's about the collective whole. It's about the entire organization. So I think if we adopt that mindset, if we continue to adopt that thought process about putting the team before yourself, then at least it's going to give us a starting point. And then ultimately, it's going to be about how well do you go out there and execute? Can we score enough points? Can we get stops in the red area? Can we get stops on third down? Can we not turn the ball over? Can we be the least penalized team? So again, all those things ultimately are going to fit together.
Matt. We'll go Matt and then Aaron Reese.
Matt Musil, KHOU 11. Lovie, when did you find out you were a finalist for the job? And then two, when you did find out, did you take a step back and like, wait a minute, the last guy you hired lasted one season. Maybe I should think about this. What was your thought process? And when did you realize that you were a finalist?
Well, as far as a finalist, I don't know when I became a finalist. I just know that once the head football coach's position was open, now it was about going forward. I was under contract. Of course, I was still working for the Houston Texans, and you know, being in that role that I was, you know, associate head coach, my opinion has been asked on a lot of different things. So I did give my opinion on what I thought we need to do going forward, things we need to improve upon, and all of that. And sometimes when you're just doing your job, most of us, as we're just doing our job, we're being interviewed for a job. you could say. So I don't know exactly when I became a candidate. I just know that, just like all of you, I know Nick interviewed and McNair family interviewed a lot of different people. And for me, I was in the background giving advice. And after they looked at those people, they got to see me in just about every situation. I've done it before. That's all I know. Just knowing when I got the call, I was excited and knew that I could lead our program to that next level. No hesitation at all. There are 32 of these jobs. If we talk about the opportunity, every time I've gotten a job, it's been a situation. First off, you don't get jobs unless maybe there's some things that need to be improved upon. And you're just looking for an opportunity. Once you get that opportunity is what you do with it. And I'm excited about this opportunity. I know we can do some great things.
Aaron Reese from The Athletic. This question's for Nick. Nick, you guys announced your other finalist about a week ago, and then there was a gap for another week before you mentioned Lovie as a candidate. What was the process for you in between those two things, and is that when you first started to consider Lovie as a possibility?
Yeah, we can speak a lot about the process. I think there's some things that, are mandated by the league, how you handle things. I would just say, generally speaking, I probably talked to more than 6 finalists or candidates, different coaches, different head coaches, different discussions, different dialogue. Again, I think that's just part of the process that you have to go through as you're working through these things. There's no direct line. There's no straight way to get there from A to B. Sometimes you just got to take in a lot of information and just kind of work through it. And again, like we talked about after the season, there were times when, Lovie had the opportunity to visit with the McNairs and just talk about our program and share his thoughts on that. So the most important thing is to just kind of keep the dialogue moving, and it's a very fluid process, and that's just, how some of these things go. So fair or not, you guys can blame me for taking as long as we did, but I know because everybody was kind of sitting on the end of their chair on pins and needles. But again, my responsibility is to the McNair family, be as thoughtful and resourceful as possible, and ultimately just make the right decision, for the organization, and that's where we ended up with Lovie.
We probably have time for about 4 or 5 more. We'll go Brian and then Christy.
4 or 5.
Brian Bearfield, Houston Style Magazine. First of all, congratulations, Coach. Right here in the front. I'm right here, Coach.
Where?
Right here.
In front. Yeah, I'm looking all the way back in the lights. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say,
that was glasses on.
first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second of all, you were part of this staff on last year, and you watched what transpired on the field, and you all didn't end up with the record that you all would like. How much do you take that personally now that you are the head coach?
Well, I took it personal then, being a part of it. A record is what, of course, is what it ended up being, but we had other opportunities. But as you're building something special, you have to go through adversity like that. What I saw is that guys, we did have a lot of fun, though, of just watching guys improve, and we were competitive throughout most of the time. But it's about winning football games. And I just think your second year, a lot of times there's a big improvement from game 1 to game 2. And I think your second year, and for me to be in a situation where it's the second year to be able to take it to that next level, that's what I'm excited about. Disappointing then, but I see good things on the horizon.
Christy.
Christy Reekin from the Associated Press. Lovie, I wonder, when you take over a team that's won 4 games in 2 straight years, what are realistic expectations for what you can do this season?
Well, I know you're right, 4 games. I do look at history a little bit, and, for a guy from Big Sandy to be here, you have to be able to dream. But again, history tells you a lot. Just looking to this week, I can't wait to see the Super Bowl, and I know the Cincinnati Bengals won 4 games the year before. They're playing for it all this week. It can happen. I'm sure the year before they went through a lot of adversity. They saw some signs, and the coaches kept coaching hard. We have an excellent coaching staff, and the one thing about being in the building a little bit, we're far along in that search to get our coaching staff in place. I talked about our leaders, but we're further along. Again, history tells you can make a quick turnaround. I don't know exactly how many games we're going to win, but as you look at our season this past year, we won 4. We had opportunities to win more. I think I don't think it's a big gap between 1 and 32. And if you get the right people together, you can achieve some great things. We have some pieces in place for us to do well. So,
Kim Davis, Chalk Talk. One for Nick, and then follow up with Coach. Nick, obviously, Coach Smith has a wealth of experience, so there's no question about that. Can you talk about the collaboration, and when it comes to game day decisions, do those lie with Coach, and can you help us with that process?
Yeah, I think once we get into the season, we'll figure out what makes the most sense. I think, and Lovie and I have talked about this, and Pep and I have talked about it as well, and I know Frank, we've had dialogue as well. Just my role is to kind of be a conduit between our staff on the coaching side and what we're doing on the field, and then kind of on the personnel and scouting side when we're evaluating players and trying to identify the types of players that we want to bring into the building. So I'm kind of in that middle ground. That's kind of my background and kind of how I was raised and developed. It might be a little bit different than what maybe some folks are accustomed to, but that's okay. I embrace it. And again, my responsibility is to serve our staff and to serve the players. Like, that's the most important thing. And if I can provide some insight and I can provide some assistance in one capacity or other, whatever that is. And a lot of times too, and I know, like my role on game day, right? So maybe it's a little bit unique relative to my position, but a lot of that is taking information in, just having an understanding what happens. Because as an example, let's say you're watching a game as a casual fan and you see the right tackle, blows the assignment, right? Or the defensive end runs scot-free, right? Okay, why did that happen? You automatically say, the right tackle, the guy's a bozo, he made a mistake, and then he got the quarterback killed. Well, maybe the tight end was actually supposed to chip on that play, and he went the wrong way in the chip, so he's the one that ME'd on the play, but he makes the right tackle kind of look like a donkey. So then you go, wait a minute, what happened? And if you're just watching and evaluating just on the outside without a thorough understanding of what actually took place, it can kind of lead to some rash decision-making. So my job, my role, I kind of see it sitting right in the middle to be able to take that information back and forth. And if I can be a resource one way or another, ultimately that's kind of how I view my role and responsibility. And whatever that looks like, whatever Lovie and I feel it makes the most sense, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. If Pep feels there's value in me doing something to help him, like, it's at the team above the self. It's not about one person. It's going to be about the team, and that's kind of how we're going to continue to build this. And the players and the people that come in that building are going to have the understanding. Quite frankly, if they don't, then they're not going to really be a good fit for the Houston Texans.
And Coach, can you talk about, you guys had a lot of turnover last year. We know there are a lot of free agents this year. Have you had a chance, I know it just happened, but to talk to any of the players? And are you hopeful that some of the players that maybe only had 1 year, that you'll get back a large number of the players you had last year? Talk about personnel a little bit.
Well, just, once I found out I would be the new head football coach, I did start the process of I wanted to talk to as many of our players as possible. There's quite a few. Hadn't been able to talk to everybody right away, but I wanted the guys to know how excited I am. A lot of them I was able to form, of course, great relationship with. It is unique when you come in and have that many guys that are on short-term contracts, but sometimes you get the best in people. As a football coach, every year I coached, I felt I was coaching like it was going to be my last year. And I wanted everybody to see exactly who I was. I think that's what we got. We got to see the best in a lot of our athletes we had on our team this past year because they were on one-year contracts. A lot of them we would like to come back. But there's a process, and we'll go through that process. That's what I'm excited about, of just watching video and coming to a common ground on exactly who we want. And then, I've been a college coach too, and there is some recruiting involved. All of these things is required, of course, in my position. And I know ultimately we're going to be able to get a good group together, from draft picks to free agency. I'm looking forward to taking all those steps together.
We'll see how good of a recruiter he is.
Cody.
Hey, Coach. Cody Davis from Sports Illustrated. You've been a part of this league now for 20 years now. From the inside, what do you think this league has to do in order to get more African Americans or minorities in general to get more of these head coaching opportunities that you spoke of?
Well, for me personally, yes, I have been there a long time. All right. I think it's the system that you have, and from being a coach, in a lot of the teams, of course, They're dominated by, people, about black athletes. And I've always encouraged guys, you can kind of tell the guys when they're playing on the ones that could become good coaches. And I've kind of encouraged that. And then people in positions of authority throughout, head coach, general managers, you got to be deliberate about trying to get more black athletes in some of the quality control positions just throughout your program. If you get that, they can move up. That's one way to get more. It's not just an interview of an interviewing a black guy. It's about having a whole lot of guys to choose from that look like me. And it's just not about talk. You look at my staff, that's what I believe in. And then letting those guys and letting them show you exactly who they are. That's how we can increase it. Then it's left up to people to choose. We have an opportunity to choose. That's how I think you get it done.
Okay, we'll go last one for John.
I have one for each of you, please. Nick, how did you feel about one of Flores' attorneys saying the only reason he didn't get the job here was because of a lawsuit? And Lovie, since you and Pep coached together with the Bears, how have you seen him evolve as a coach, and how important was it to have him to preserve the continuity with Mills?
I'll go first, I guess. So, again, the most important thing was for us to stay true to our process and kind of focus on the things that we were doing. Things that are said externally or statements that are made, my responsibility is to the Texans, and that's where it's going to remain for, as long as I'm here working for the McNair family.
And you said Pep? Well, good. Well, how much, back then, as you go back then, we're trying to win every game, of course, then. Word gets out on the guys that are bright, that are doing this, that can help you win football games. That's what was told to me about Pep Hamilton back in the day. You start doing your research and you start talking with him. If anybody spent time with Pep, kind of see what I'm talking about. And experience. Pep went through, as I talk about the ranks, Pep came in here, worked his way up there. And if you could do a good job, people ask, how can I move up? Just doing a good job where you are. That's what Pep did in the quarterback room. Then as a coordinator, and I've just kind of watched his career, he had an opportunity. And as you give guys opportunity, they show you exactly who they are. And that's why I'm so excited about what he's going to bring to us.
And how important was it to have him to preserve the continuity with Mills?
It was a must, as I see it. One of the first things, of course, that I did right away, Pep, we need you. But we have a relationship, too. And Pep Hamilton had a lot of opportunities to go a lot of different places. You talk about, the question was asked, can you get it done here? Why here? Because we've been around here. And we kind of see exactly what we can do. But Pep has an expertise. As you look at his background with what he did in San Diego with Herbert to, of course, what he did with Davis here. He's a fundamental coach that has a defensive mentality on toughness with the running game and all of those things. And I'm excited about him being on our staff and seeing exactly what, and our Houston fans will be on what he's going to do.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. We just heard from Texans GM Nick Casario and the new head coach of the Houston Texans, Lovie Smith, a man who has been on the sidelines for this past season as the defensive coordinator. He started off this press conference by saying this was a dream come true for him. He grew up in East Texas, went to Big Sandy High School. He says he wanted to be a coach all his life, and a lot of that was based on what he had as a coach growing up. But now to have this role with the Texans, he said was a dream. He does understand that it is not going to be an easy role. He said to sit in this role, it's about winning football. He talked about how important special teams is, how important the defense is. Again, this is a man who was the defensive coordinator. He says this coming season, he will be calling the defensive plays for the Texans. He also said that it's his responsibility as head coach to bring Texans fans back and to bring the team, quote, where we need to be. there were some questions about the Texans process and how it was impacted, or if it was impacted, by the Brian Flores lawsuit. Lovie said he didn't know much about it, hadn't really dug into the lawsuit, but he did say that there is a problem in the league if there are only 2 black coaches, now himself and Mike Tomlin. GM Nick Casario said that the lawsuit didn't play any role in the hiring of Lovie Smith as head coach. Quote, that really didn't affect the process at all. But Lovie said there are a lot of young black coaches who are going to be on the Texans coaching staff this next year, and he expects them to do a lot of great things. He expanded on that a little bit later, saying that it's up to the head coaches, to the GMs, to keep an eye out for the players who would make good coaches in the future and to foster that. Questioned about why it took so long for Lovie to be named, for a head coach to be picked, Casario said, ultimately, I was trying to be very thoughtful. That was my mission and my goal, but he says this is the best decision for the Texans. So let me know. What do you think as we take a live look at NRG Stadium, where that press conference just happened? What do you think about Lovie Smith as the head coach of the Texans? He mentioned he is the first person to look like him, the first black man to coach 3 NFL teams, to be the head coach. He was with the Bears, then the Buccaneers, took a little time off for college football. He coached the Illini for about 5 seasons, and then is now the Texans head coach. What are your expectations for this last season? One of the things he referenced was the Bengals, who are now playing in the Super Bowl, last year had a pretty bad season. I think they had a 4-win season, which is what the Texans had this season. So he pointed out that great things can come out of struggle, and you learn a lot through those rough seasons. We have reporters Matt Musil and Jason Bristol at NRG. They're gathering so much more on this, and we will have more coming up on KHU 11 at News at noon, which is about to get started, as well as the 411 KHU 11 News at 5, 6, and 11. In the meantime, any updates, anything new that develops, you know you can find it on our Roku channel, our Fire TV channel, or YouTube, any of our social media channels as well.